Hi, today I'm going to walk you through the Cornfield Scouting Lab provided by Kansas Corn STEM. Hi, my name is Christopher Remmich and I'm a Kansas Corn lead teacher from Garden City, Kansas. And today I'm going to be walking you through the Cornfield Scouting Lab provided by Kansas Corn STEM. And what the purpose of this Cornfield Scouting Lab is to get kids out into the field and survey and look around and assess the cornfield and the plants in the cornfield. When they do that, they're going to be looking for pests, they're going to be looking for disease, any type of nutrition deficiencies and stuff. And again, the purpose is to get them out there and just to explore the cornfield world. Now, some of the materials that you guys will be wanting is, especially at the end, if you want to do an insect collection, you can have a bug net right here. And you can see you'll need a foam board and some dissection pins. For the actual diseases stuff, we have a case study packet. We also have our handy field guide provided by Kansas Corn STEM. And then some baggies to take samples. You guys can have like a little trowel right here, a little shovel to get any dirt that you need. A magnifying glass if you want. You can even get some little disposable shoe booties, right? If you don't want your kids trekking in mud, or if it kind of rained the night before, things like that, if it's pretty muddy out. And then two, one of the best things is maybe a camera or a phone that has some camera features on that. All right, so yeah, welcome to the Cornfield Scouting Lab here today. And if we want to look at a couple of these learning objectives that we have, popping right up. There we go. We want to learn about conditions that affect corn growth and development out in the field. We want to be able to properly survey and use proper surveying techniques out in the field that are used actually by farmers. And we want to apply randomization in a real-world setting. We also want to be able at the end to perform some data analysis and actually write up a lab report, a field scouting report with your results. And we want to present those to an audience. So you kind of have a whole gamut there. And actually, as a bonus at the very end, we'll actually talk about doing an insect collection as well. All right. So one of the things that you guys want to do is just to get the ball rolling, have your kids get into groups, at least partners, 2, 3, or 4, however you guys do groups, and give them these preliminary discussion questions, right? Why would a farmer want to scout their field? What are they looking for when they scout that field? How often should they go out and survey and look at their field? When looking at a corn plant, what are those major parts that you need to be looking at? What stages of growth should those corn plants be in? And are they meeting that expectation? When farmers scout their field, what is the best way they do it? Do they apply randomization to it? Do they go out? Do they look at the same area all the time, each time they go out? And what are some ways that they can randomly do this? And then what technology can farmers use to actually go out and scout their fields? So you give them about 5-6 minutes to go through that, or 10 minutes even if you need to. Have them go through and just see what kind of background information your students have about going out into the field. And when you come into it, you can end up talking about bringing them afterwards. Why they need to constantly assess their crops, okay? Are their crops meeting, right, that proper growth stage based on the weather conditions, right? We have a lot of sunlight, they should be at this stage of growth, and are they meeting that expectation? Is there anything hindering the growth of those crops, right? Do we need to apply fertilizer, pesticides, herbicides? And when is the optimal time to harvest based on what stage that we're seeing at? And when looking at this, we want to actually use both random and non-random techniques when surveying our field, right? The randomization gets us a good representation of what we're seeing out in the field, but at the same time, you want to actually hit some certain spots consistently so you can actually look at the trend of what's happening and being able to compare a certain area of the field from before to now to see how it's developing. So you actually want to use both of those techniques of randomization and non-random observation. Now, 5 factors that we're going to be looking at for affecting the growth of the plant is pests, right? Pests are any animals that can cause disease to the plant, and when we're thinking about that, vertebrates, invertebrates, right? So you got bunnies, you got worms, and everything in between there. Then we're looking at disease. So when we're thinking about disease, we're looking at organisms, especially those single-celled little buggies, right, that can cause injury to the plant. So think your bacteria and your fungi. Weeds. Weeds will actually compete for resources of our crop. So we want to actually make sure to look at that. And wherever you're situated, location in the country, you have specific weeds that go after you. So one of the common ones, ragweed, velvet weed, the velvet leaf weed. And then nutrition, right? Are your crops, are your plants getting the proper nutrition that they need? If not, that's going to hinder development in their growth stages. So think, are they getting enough iron? Are they getting enough nitrogen and phosphorus? And then weather, obviously, yeah, here, especially in the Midwest, we can be looking for hail, flooding, right, drought. So are there any abnormal conditions? And when looking at that, we have this nice field guide that we'll go over a little bit more. And you can see that we actually have it broken down by those 5 factors of disease, pests, weeds, nutrition, and weather. And it has pictures with them and a little explanation about what you're looking at. All right, so before you go out into the field, you want to actually already kind of plan your surveying technique. You want your kids to actually kind of know what they're doing before they go out there, so that way it's just kind of not pandemonium there. So a couple things that we're going to do is we're going to create the pattern that we want our kids to go through. So the first one is, what type of walking pattern are they going to do? And there's 2 walking patterns. You can do the zigzag, or you can do an M pattern that we're seeing right here. Now, there you go, there's the zigzag and the M pattern. Now, one way they can do this is they just have a dice, right, per group. Each group gets a pair of die, and then they can roll the dice. And as you can see, if they get an odd number, they'll do the zigzag. An even number, they will go for their M patterns. Now, what angle will they start when facing the field? So when they get to that edge of the field, if everyone's just always going straight and doing the zigzag, they're always going to get that same pattern. So we want to actually have a random angle put into this. So again, they're going to roll the dice, and based on the number they have, are they going to go 30, 60, 90, 120, and 150, right? And again, if you got 6, go ahead and give a roll again. But this is how you would orientate yourself towards the field, right? So would you be 30 degrees, 60, 90 would be straight ahead. So it's important to kind of randomize, yeah, the angle that you're approaching it. And then 2, the pacing, right? So we're looking at a pacing of about 30 inches, right, which is a normal pace that kids go. So if you roll a 1 to 4 on your dice, you're going to go 15 steps, right? 2 to 5 is 24, 3 to 6 is 33 paces. So you have some that you're going to be zigzagging a lot shorter and more often, and other patterns in which you're going to be going a lot longer out there. And again, this is all randomized by the roll of a die. Now, one thing you want to do, if you have a lot of kids out there, you could actually have them specialize in the type of effects that we see in the corn plants. Remember that weather, disease, pests. So you can actually drop that down. If they roll a dice right here, they get assigned to a specific classification type right there. Or again, you can just have them look at everything. So yeah, it just depends if you want them to specialize or not. And then we actually have what's called the grid map right here, in which they can outline their walking pattern. Now, this is, they could actually go and write in this beforehand, but it's probably good to just have them do it as they go out there, okay? So if you notice, I put down, like when I did my kind of randomization, I got the zigzagging pattern. I'm going to approach the edge of the field 60 degrees. I'm going to go my 24 paces, and I'm going to specifically be looking for pests, okay? So yeah, when you get them out, you guys can print out this walking pattern right here, the grid map and the logbook that we'll talk about here in just a sec. So a couple things when you go out there to survey your field is you want to make sure that everyone's going to be appropriately dressed for field work and weather, right? So you want long pants, closed-toed shoes, make sure they maybe have a hat on outside to protect them from the sun, sunscreen, bug spray. Always have them use a buddy system, so it's important that they're in groups of maybe 2 or 3 out there. Those cornfields, there's a lot of corn plants. We've got about 30,000 corn plants per acre. It's easy to get lost sometimes when you're having a lot of fun, right? Have a way to communicate, so make sure, like if they have a phone, right, they have text message. You can even give them whistles, or you can give each kid a flare gun and have fun with that. Or you can set an alarm. Make sure when they have that, they have some kind of timer or alarm to when they come back, and have a designated area to return to at a specific time. right? Okay. So what's going to happen is once they got their kind of pattern type, they're going to go out into the field, and at each of those stopping points, right, which is determined by your pacing steps, again 24 steps or 15 or 33, you're going to observe the closest 3 corn plants on your right side. So again, you kind of hit your spot, you're going to turn to the right, and those 3 closest plants right there are the ones that you're going to survey. And it's important to, even though we're doing randomization, it's important to be consistent in your randomization as well. So we're looking at those 3 plants on the right hand side. You're going to survey the plants, right, according to your classification. So again, pests, disease, weather, or you're looking at them all, again, just depending on what you want your kids to observe. And again, be consistent, right? And what's a good thing at each stopping point, if your kids have access to a camera or their phones on, the cameras on their phones, they can take those pictures at each stopping place. So even though they're kind of surveying the plants right there, they would at least have a picture to when they come back into the classroom, they can kind of look back and see what they were observing during that time. And if they and that's really good if they have any questions, right? Sometimes it's hard for a student to explain what they were kind of seeing. So if they have a picture, they'd be able to relate to that a lot easier right here. So again, you kind of have your grid map showing the pathway that you're taking. You have your logbook in which you're actually going to be writing down your observations that we'll show here in just a second. And you're just labeling each stops A, B, C, so on and so forth. So however many stops you go is how many letters you get. If you're allowed in the field, and again, you want to make sure you ask your farmer proper etiquette while going into their field, and hopefully they explain that and you guys had a good talk before. But if allowed, can you take samples of leaves right here? So if you're seeing some disease on the leaves, yeah, you can take a sample. You can kind of just pull a leaf off of one of the corn plants. You can even take soil samples if you want to, especially if you see like a nematode infestation or something like that. And that's where you kind of have your little baggies out there. So you can just pop a corn leaf into the baggie or a soil sample. If you're using a leaf, make sure that you have kind of a wet towel available to it so it doesn't just dry out in there. And it doesn't have to be soaking wet, just a little moist there. And here's what that logging book looks like. So at the front part right here, at the top, you have your student names, right? Put in your location, the date, the time, the temperature is really important. What does the weather look like? The growth stage, and we're going to talk about the growth stage right here, being able to determine what stage of growth your corn is, and that's through our growing degree days. We actually have a growing degree days lab as well that would be really awesome to check out and to be able to have completed before even doing the surveying. So we have the vegetative stage, so like V8, right? So that's the 8th stage within the vegetative stage, so it's not into the reproductive stage quite yet, no tassel. And then, like, again, I'm putting my classification or my pests right here. So at each point in my logbook, when I stop and I look at those 3 plants onto my right side, I'm going to note whatever observations of the corn plant we're looking at, okay? So in this case, my first stop right here, we're showing signs of wilting. There's some cinch bugs kind of near the base of the plant. They're in the mostly that nymph stage right there, that beginning stage. And 2 out of the 3 plants were actually affected. And these were at a V6 stage. So if you notice, based on the number of growing degree days, our plant should be at the vegetative 8th stage right here. But these ones, this one right here, these plants right here are at a V6. So maybe those cinch bugs, that infestation is kind of limiting the growth of your corn plants. And then again, my zigzag pattern, I end up zigging for about 24 paces. And I see that on the right side, my corn plants are healthy, no real signs of disease or pests or anything. Look pretty good, and they're at the V7 stage, right? So maybe just slightly behind, but maybe they're right in the middle of the cornfield, not getting as much sunlight as they could be. And then my last one, we're seeing some stunted plant growth right here. Oval shapes, right, plants, like which are easily removed, right? So their roots are really stubby, so you can almost just push them over and they'll fall there. And we kind of look down at the soil and we see that there might be a possible nematode infestation. So right here we would take a soil sample. Again, you got your trowel, just kind of get in a little good, about a depth, right? Maybe a 4 inches right here, just as your trowel shows. Put that in your baggie and you guys could be able to sample that a little later. as well as your point A part right here, you have those cinch bugs. Maybe you want to take a leaf sample with that on A. And just make sure if you do take a sample that you're putting down that sample was taken at that spot. Okay. All right, so as I was going through, I was labeling in my grid map right here. So I started, at the edge of the field, I didn't take any samples. I didn't do any scouting at the edge of the field. And actually, in this case, but it might actually be a good idea to take a look at that edge of the field right in there, because that's where a lot of good stuff happens. That's where the first place where pests meet. You're getting a lot of sunlight. Maybe other animals come in and they're nibbling away at the corn plants, right? So there's a lot happening within that edge right there. So that actually might be a good place to start. But if not, yeah, you can jump in, and as you see, I did my 24 paces, I hit my A. I'm noting cinch bugs. Here it's just a quick notice of what was happening there, maybe even the stage. Use your logbook to actually really get the details down there. So I'm zigging and zagging, seeing some healthy plants, nematodes right here, and by the time we're end with this scouting thing, I made it to point F, and again, I'm seeing some healthy plants in the V6 stage. Okay. So like we said, Kansas Corn STEM actually has a growing degree days lab. It's really nice and easy, quick lab to do, just one class period you can get it done in. And what you want to do with growing degree days is you want to be able to determine how much sunlight each plant has been given, and that sunlight can be used to determine at what growth stage our plants are at, okay? So what we do is we base that off of the air temperature for each day, right, within a 24-hour period. And what you're doing is you're getting the maximum temperature, you're adding that to the minimum temperature of the day, dividing by 2, and then you're going to subtract out a lower base. So that's the equation that we're using for each and every day. And there's a couple rules to that. The lower base temperature for corn is 50 degrees, so anything lower than 50 degrees, we don't see much growth at all. There is no growth really with that. So the minimum is 50, right? So if your minimum temperature exceeds or goes below 50 degrees, you still use the number 50, right? Because growth stops at that point. The maximum temperature is above 86 degrees. After about 86 degrees, we're starting to see some heat stress. So the plant is stressed out and not using that energy for growth, but just to kind of maintain. So yeah, 86 is the top. So even if it's a 90-degree day, you're only using the temperature of 86 on there. So what we're seeing here in this type of hybrid plant right here, we see that if we had 125 growing degree days, right, we added up all those growing degree days, we would see that after about 125 of those days, we would see emergence of our plants, right? V6, right, you saw that we should be at stage V8, there's a lot at V6, so we should be able to see tassel initiation, and we should have had 475 degree growing days. Now, you can go to this website right here, and you can actually determine the number of growing degree days with that. So if we were to click on that and go to our website, let's see here. Okay, so that link would take you to this website. You would just go to your area, whatever county. I'm usually in Finney County. Let's see if I can get that. Did I hit it? Oh, Haskell. We'll go with Haskell, right? And we would create that growing degree graph. And you're going to see right here the amount of growing degree days as it goes. And here you can put in your type of hybrid plant. So this is 113 degree maturity days. Type of hybrid plant, okay? You can see when the silking will happen. So this is a good graph, and again, you guys can go to that lab to check out all the good information that has. But use this as a resource before going out into your cornfield. All right, so I'm going to go back. Okay. So after you do that, we end up having a nice little analysis. So again, our students are going to end up doing a nice scouting report at the end of this. So we can get in some math so they can show the calculation of their growing degree days. They can actually determine the percentage of plants, right, that have those specific conditions. Remember, in my example, we had cinch bugs, we had possible nematode infection right there, or infestation. So we can actually take the number of corn plants that were affected, and we can divide that by the total number of corn plants that we observed to get a percentage there. And if you want to see the percentage of corn plants that may be affected over the course of the whole crop, right, you can actually take the number of acres, multiply that by 28,500, right, which is kind of your typical standard. Your farmer that you talk to, they might actually know how many plants they have per acre or a rough estimate. You can use that. And then times that percentage that you found above. So if I'm finding that I have, let's say, 10% cinch bug infestation, I would take my 10%, I would multiply that by that 28,500 and times that by the number of acres, and I would get a good estimation of how many of my corn plants are affected with that cinch bug infestation there. And when you look at that, you can actually pull data from all the other groups right here, and you can see how is that infestation happening? Is it evenly found throughout the field? Is it clumped to a certain region? Or is it just kind of random right there? So that's also important to know, is kind of how are those diseases clustered, right? Those factors clustered around your cornfield. All right. So the cool thing about this presentation is we go through all the, I shouldn't say all of them, but a really good number of pests and disease. You can see, again, we have the pictures right here. We explain what they are, how they affect the corn plants. Okay, so a lot of good information that we also ended up putting into our guide right here, our field guide. So it's got this nice little ring on there. We have it laminated so it can survive the weather. And again, just a really good resource that your kids can have out in the field, really handy, really portable. And again, Kansas Corn STEM did a great job putting this together here. So we have our field guide. You want your kids to have their logbook for their observations, right? And then you also want them to have their grid map showing the actual path and pattern that they take. One other thing to do before they go out in the field, maybe just to kind of have kids get a taste of what they're kind of looking at right here from, again, those disease and pests and stuff. We actually have case studies right here for each type of factor, right? So we got our disease case study, and we have 2 for each right here. Our pest case study, right? Nutritional, weather, and then we have our weeds in here. So these are a good thing to kind of get kids out before, so that way they maybe have a little bit more confidence when they get out into the field, and kind of gives them a little bit, again, evidence what they should be looking at here. So that's really good for front load that. Another thing too is when you talk with your farmer before they enter in the field, it's actually good to have them go over maybe some safety spots, right? There might be some treacherous areas, maybe some drop-offs or some points like where there's mud or conditions there, as well as maybe some just good information that they say they look for. With your farmer though, you probably want to hold off on him or her talking about the types of diseases and stuff that they have, because you want your kids to actually end up going out there and finding that. So it would be good to talk about that with the farmer after they go out into the field, right? So as kind of a good review session. And you might want to provide a snack for that, because they'll be out in the field all day kind of looking at that. So they can have a snack, talk to the farmer, be a good time, good fun. All right, so the last thing that we're actually going to look on here is, actually we're going to have a bonus on collecting insects with this. So this is really fun. Again, this is another thing that gets kids out there. They get really excited interacting with not only the plants, but also the animals and organisms out there. And they can have a nice little collection that they can take home as well. So I'm going to go to that slide here real quick. Here we are. Yeah, there's a lot of slides over all those factors right there we have. So a lot of good information out there. So here's our kind of bonus thing, our insect collection. Again, we want our kids ultimately to create their own insect collection, and I'll kind of show, we have an example right here below. Okay, there's an example. I got another one over here. So really it kind of just depends on what kind of style and how much you guys talk about your insects. But again, really all you need are some baggies to collect your insects, an insect net right here, and some dissection pins. And then they can use the internet to actually go in and look at the different types of insects and find like their scientific name or even their common name. Again, depends how deep you want to go into there. But yeah, you'll need a foam board, 1 per student, right? Or you can do groups, it's up to you. Number 2 dissection pins for the actual pinning of the insects. And then you can do paper for labels, or you can even write directly onto the foam board there. Now that's inside the classroom. Outside, right, again, you want the nets, you want baggies for collecting your insects, okay? Sharpies, right, to kind of write on those baggies, the students' names, because you're going to end up putting these guys in the freezer for a few days and stuff, so you don't want that to get mixed up right here. So Sharpies to be able to put the names on the baggies. You do want a cooler, right, with some ice or cold packs. That's probably the best thing to do if you can, but you can get a box or anything to kind of store the kids' samples that they have. And then of course you'll need a freezer. And it's good to maybe have a first aid kit and maybe some field or work gloves out there. Some kids find some nasty patches of thorny bushes and things like that. And a first aid kit too in case kids get any scrapes or maybe get stung by something. A lot of times our students like to just move rocks and put their hands in places or whatnot. So that's one thing you might want to go over, is just make sure that they're aware of where they're putting their hands as they're doing this. Okay. So yeah, what they're going to do is they're going to go out into the field, they're going to collect them, and really what they're doing is you can be in individuals, you can be in pairs or groups, so at least each group gets one of these nets right out here, and they should have a handful of baggies. And make sure to tell them where they can go and what's out of bounds, right? You don't want them getting too far because they'll be pretty excited about going out and collecting these, and man, you'll just see them like just go way out there, way too far. So make sure you tell them where they can and can't go. So yeah, when they're going to use their nets to catch bugs, and a lot of times when they're kind of swiping the nets, if they want to capture a bug, they can just hold it like this. You can even do the kind of flip method right here if you don't want to kind of get your hands too close to the organism. And then all you need to do is have the other partner in your group take a baggie, right? And if they have it kind of grabbed right here, you can really just kind of put the baggie over this area here, and you can just kind of just dump the insect into the baggie like so, right, like that. All right, and then you put it over here and you zip it up, right, or you you just zip it up right there. One thing you might want to do though is if you're going to be out there for a while, you want to be kind of humane to your bugs as much as possible. So you might want to blow some air in there so they have some air to breathe in with that. And then you'll put that in the cooler. And the reason why we want a cooler is because it would be able to cool down their body temperature, and then being cold-blooded organisms, they kind of just go to sleep kind of with that. So it's a little bit more humane. But if you don't have a cooler available to you and you're just putting them into a box, make sure you get them to the freezer quick, but make sure that box is out of the sun, right? So you don't want them in a baggie with the sun beating down on them with that. So yeah, so make sure to blow air in your baggies and put it in the cooler. And then what happens is you're going to just take these baggies and you're going to put them in the freezer. And you'll want to keep your bugs in the freezer for at least 48 hours for them to kind of dry out a little bit. And what will happen is the kids will get their baggies, they'll take them out, and they'll just actually stick pins through them. And it's actually not hard at all. And the big thing is you want those kids to pin the insects while they're still really cold, right? The colder the better. As they start to room to warm temperature, it might be a little bit more messy or whatnot, but honestly, not too much mess is involved here. Pinning spiders can kind of be a little leaky. That's the only thing you have to look out for here. But the pinning process, we have two really good resources right here. You can hit those YouTube links, and they do a great job showing the actual technique of pinning the insects to those boards. Okay. Now, one thing I want to cover real quick, the last thing, is that field scouting report, okay? So we just put together a few bullet points on what a field report should have for what your students should put in there. So we want them to be able to put down what they did, right? Make sure to put down the classification they were responsible, what were they actually looking for in the corn plants. Make sure to put their chosen pathway and any pictures they can upload into their report that they took. Make sure those pictures have descriptions and the conditions that they saw. And actually, even you can have suggestions on what could be done about each condition. Now, one of the things too, like if there's things, not everything's listed in the field guide, right? You're always going to come up across something that just might just be weird, right? So that's actually a good learning experience. Again, have them take a sample, have them take a snapshot, and have them go research that and have them put that in their report about what they found. And then also too, you want to actually show your data, right? So have them showing their worked data, their worked analysis right there, and also their growing degree calculations. And how did those growing degree calculations match up with what was actually observed in the field? And then they should give a conclusion to their cornfield survey, what they found, what they even maybe recommend, and if they had fun. And that kind of concludes the Cornfield Scouting Lab. So to see more, go ahead and visit kansascornstem.com. Thank you.